Okay, let's unpack this. We're diving into a really interesting source today. It starts out, looking like a language lesson, but it quickly opens up into something much bigger. A look at a major cultural shift happening in Indonesia.
That's right. The source gives you some essential tools in Indonesian specific vocabulary grammar points. And then it shows you why these particular phrases are so important.
How so?
By connecting them to this massive ongoing movement of people within the country. So our mission is to sort of pull all that together for you.
Right, and it kicks off with a simple scenario, pretty relatable, I think. A conversation between two people, Heidi and Novi.
Yeah.
Heidi's asking Novi about where they're from, how long they've been living in Jakarta. It immediately sets the stage for talking about personal history and location.
Exactly. Heidi asks, "Kamu dari Bogor?" You're from Bogor.
And Novi confirms, "Iya, saya dilahirkan di sana," which is like, "Yep, I was born there."
Then comes a really key question, the kind you probably hear all the time in Indonesia, given, the scale of internal migration we're talking about. Sejak, kapan, kamu pindah ke Jakarta?
Okay, and the source gives a couple of ways to think about that in English.
Yeah, when did you move to Jakarta? Is one way. Or maybe a bit more naturally in English conversation, since when have you lived in Jakarta? It really gets right to the heart of someone's journey.
And Novi's answer?
Novi answers with a specific time. Saat saya umur 17 tahun. So when I was 17 years old. And just this short exchange, it already contains these core elements you need to talk about where you came from and when you arrived somewhere else.
What's interesting too is how auditory reacts. They seem quite impressed. They say, "Tapi kamu tahu di Jakarta lebih banyak daripada orang-orang yang." It's like, no, but you know Jakarta better than anyone I know.
Yeah. And Novi's reply connects their personal history back to specific actions they took. Sebenarnya, saya pernah belajar panduan wisata untuk pengunjung asing, which translates to, actually, I used to study travel guides for tourists.
Okay. So you have this simple chat, but it's built on fundamental language points that are really relevant to a huge part of the Indonesian experience.
Definitely. Words like pindah, meaning to move, that one is absolutely central to the whole cultural phenomenon the source gets into later.
Right. And dilahirkan, to be born.
Yeah, to be born. And the source points out something important about the die prefix here.
Okay.
It indicates the passive voice. So the subject is being born. It's different from melahirkan, which means to give birth. That's used for the person doing the action.
I see. Like the example they gave.
Exactly. Dia dilahirkan pada tanggal 8 January. She was born on January 8th. That day tells you something was done to her. She received the action.
Got it. That passive construction is pretty common then.
It is.
The dialogue also gives us useful comparison words. Like darapada, that means then.
Yep, then. The source shows the structure. A daripada B means A, then B. Their example was, Ibuku suka saya daripada kakak. My mother likes me more than my older brother.
Okay, makes sense.
And we also quickly picked up umur for age, tentang meaning about.
Canal for to know someone.
Right. Belajar for study, pengunjung for visitor, and wisata for travel. All useful words, definitely.
But pindah and dilahirkan seem to really anchor this theme of movement and origin.
Yeah, absolutely do.
Okay, but knowing individual words isn't quite enough, is it? Yeah. You need to string them together. How does the source show us how to actually discuss past events and movements?
Well, it focuses on two key grammar structures. First, asking about the start time of something that began in the past, using Sejak, kapan, kamu.
Sejak, kapan, kamu.
Yeah, literally. It's like since when you... It's used to ask about the point an action began, especially if it continues or is relevant now.
Like the question I asked Novi earlier. Sejak, kapan kamu pindah ke Jakarta?
Precisely. Since when did you move? Or since when have you lived in Jakarta? And the source gives other examples too, like Sejak kapan kamu bekerja di sini? Since when have you worked here?
Or Sejak kapan kamu belajar Bahasa Indonesia? Since when have you been studying Indonesian?
Exactly. These are really common questions.
And how do you answer them? What does the source suggest?
Well, the answers can be specific times or events. The source shows responses like Sejak tahun 2000, since the year 2000.
Or dari bulan lalu, from last month.
Or even linking it to an event. Saat saya lulus kuliah, when I graduated from university. It's all about marking that starting point in the past.
Okay, that's one structure. What was the second key one?
The second one is for stating you've done something or been somewhere in the past. That uses saya pernah.
Saya pernah.
Saya is I, and pernah conveys this idea of ever or used to, depending on the context.
Like Nobi saying, saya pernah belajar panduan wisata. I used to study travel guides.
Exactly. Or the other examples the source provides, saya pernah belajar Bahasa Indonesia. I used to learn Indonesian language.
Saya pernah tinggal di Amerika. I used to live in the US.
Right. And you can use it in questions too. Apakah kamu pernah pergi ke Australia? Have you ever been to Australia?
So these two structures, Sejak kapan and saya pernah, they're really vital for talking about your personal history, your experiences, where you've been.
Absolutely fundamental.
So what makes these basic phrases about moving and history so relevant, so widespread in Indonesia today? This is where the source dives into that major cultural trend, right? Putting the language points into this fascinating context.
Yeah, exactly. It's about the significant movement of young people, primarily from rural areas into the big cities.
And this isn't just a small thing. It's a substantial flow of people.
Definitely. The source lists major destinations like Jakarta, of course, but also Bandung, Semarang, Surabaya, and Medan, the big urban centers.
And according to the source, what's the main driver? Why are people moving?
It seems primarily economic. People are seeking a better quality of life. Specifically, looking for better jobs and the higher income they believe the cities offer.
The scale sounds quite striking. Does the source give any numbers?
It does give one specific data point for Jakarta back in 2013. It says 52,166 people moved there in that year alone.
Wow, that's a lot for one city in 1 year.
It is. And the source also mentions the expected outcomes for that group, which shows the reality isn't always straightforward. Only about 16.3% were expected to actually settle permanently in Jakarta. Another 9% or so outside Jakarta.
And the rest.
A large chunk, 29.5%, were actually expected to return to their hometowns.
Nearly a third returning home.
Yeah.
That suggests the search for opportunity doesn't always pan out as planned.
That seems to be the implication. And the source also highlights some of the downsides of this massive urbanization.
For the cities, you mean?
Yes. Things like increasing unemployment may be linked to the limited number of jobs compared to the influx of people.
Makes sense. What else?
worsening traffic jams, which anyone who knows Jakarta can attest to, and rising crime rates in the cities are also mentioned as adverse effects.
And is there any mention of the impact back in the rural areas these people are leaving?
Yeah, the source briefly touches on that. It mentions a related issue. Farms and fields sometimes being left untreated or unattended. So it's a shift that impacts both ends, the origin and the destination.
Right. So, faced with these challenges, does the source mention any potential solutions or government responses?
It does introduce a governmental project called transmigration.
Transmigration, okay.
Now, the source doesn't detail its full history, which is complex, but the basic idea often involves relocating people from very densely populated islands like Java to less crowded areas elsewhere in the archipelago.
And what are the stated goals of such a program?
According to the source, the stated aims are quite ambitious, sort of big picture goals. Things like achieving a more equal distribution of the population across the country, promoting equality of development nationwide, better management of natural resources, and also creating employment opportunities in those less populated, often rural areas.
I see. So you can really see how learning phrases like Sejak, kapan, kamu, pindah, since when did you move? Or saya pernah tinggal di, I used to live in, isn't just, abstract language practice.
Not at all.
You're actually acquiring the linguistic tools to talk about a core defining experience for literally millions of Indonesians.
Exactly. That journey from a village or a smaller town to the big city, chasing that better life and all the complex realities that come with it.
It really shows how language is like a window into the socioeconomic fabric of a place, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. It lets you discuss these widespread personal journeys and the larger forces that are shaping them.
So this deep dive has really shown us how mastering these phrases for talking about your past, about where you've moved, it directly relates to this huge phenomenon of urbanization in Indonesia. The vocabulary, the grammar, they aren't just words on a page. They're the way people articulate their search for opportunity, their place in a country that's changing really rapidly.
And understanding that connection, I think, helps you appreciate why these particular language points are so foundational. If you want to connect with people about their lives, their histories in Indonesia.
Definitely. So maybe here's a final thought for you, our listener, to consider, based just on what we've discussed from the source material. Considering those pressures building up in the cities, the unemployment, the traffic, the crime, and also the impact on the areas people leave behind, what are the really complex trade-offs involved here? For both the individual making that journey and for Indonesia as a nation, when so many people follow that powerful pull towards the big cities seeking opportunity.
Thank you for watching this video. Hopefully useful. Don't forget to like and subscribe.